boards really need to focus on vision. How do you really look at what kids need, what your communities need? How do you have those conversations about what can we do to make things better? Not just for one group of kids, but all of our kids. And you know that as well as any with the diversity you have in this community and the importance of working with different groups and different socioeconomic levels. I would argue with anyone that our kids have more opportunities today than they did 20 years ago. And our schools are working harder every day, probably more so than they did 20 years ago. When you calculate inflation with less money. You know, now you hear you need to run schools like a business. You cannot run schools like a business. You can have a business mindset. You can focus on ways to try to save money and cut costs and be more efficient. But when we're dealing with kids and you've got that little Johnny that is multi-handicapped or comes from a broken home and struggles just to get to school, that is not a widget, and it's not the same as little Sally that sits next to her. And we have to understand that, and trying to portray that to the legislature is difficult because we have adopted a philosophy that whatever happened in Florida is good for Oklahoma. 43% of Oklahomans, almost half, will receive no benefit from this tax cut. And 120 million goes out, we're 500 million short, and you know, so it's hard to balance. The lowest 20%, there's no change, and that is with an income level of up to $17,300. So there's no change for them. There's no benefit. The second 20%, they get $6 back. Basically, that's their tax cut is $6. And that's for a tax bracket of $17,320 or $31,200. And when you think about your community and where you are, there are a lot of folks that are going to fall into that category. The middle 20%, they get $24 back. Their windfall is huge. $31,200 to $51,800. And it goes on, and you know, when you get up to the top 1%, which is $399,000 and above, they get about $1,930. And I think we've got some serious problems with our tax structure. The bottom line is you're not putting enough money in education now. We still have the same number of students. Even if they get on the bus at 5:30 instead of 6:30, you still have the same amount of dollars. It's still just as difficult. Because if you took all the superintendent salaries in the state, added them up, and said, okay, no more, you would impact the budget by about 2.2%. Well, in the last 3 years, we've been cut in education over 15%. We're looking at another 5% cut this year. Higher Ed's been cut 9%, and their growth is up 34%. You know, the challenges just continue to come at us right and left.